Did you know there is end time imagery in Lehi's dream? The end time imagery is the fall of the great and spacious building. And a lot of people would think that that fall happens at the coming of Jesus. But according to the angel and Nephi, the fall of the great and spacious building is prior to the coming of Christ. And there will be a time when the great and spacious building falls and people are left without the false facades, the buildings without foundations that will tumble to the ground. Let's think a little bit about the imagery that's in Lehi's dream. You have the great and spacious building that stands high in the air. You have people mocking. And who are they mocking? They're mocking those people who are struggling on the path, that are holding fast to the iron rod, trying to get through the thick darkness, who are struggling toward the tree. They're mocking those who are even taking the fruit of the tree. And many of those people who come and partake of the fruit hear the siren calls of those in the great and spacious building, and they turn away from the tree because they are ashamed. That building stands higher than anything else in the scene, overlooks the entire thing, and anybody who looks in that direction would think that those in the building have some type of special status or authority, and they would think that what is in the great and spacious building is more desirable than even the humble tree itself. But in the dream, the great and spacious building ends up falling. Great and spacious building, we find out in further chapters there, as the angel talks to Nephi, represents the great and abominable church. As people struggle on the path through the darkness, and they're holding on to the rod of iron, that rod of iron and the path really holds only one person at a time. A lot of people would love to think that the filthy river has a ferry boat on it that called the Good Ship Zion, and that you can hop in the Good Ship Zion, and that's going to take you to the tree as a group, and as a group you get saved. I don't think that imagery exists. That is not part of Lehi's dream. In order to get to the tree, in order to partake of the fruit, you have to go there individually, and you have to traverse darkness in order to get there. Well, what's going to happen in the end times before Jesus comes, when the great and abominable church, the great and spacious building, when that falls, and it says, "And great is the fall thereof"? What happens to everyone who is in the field, in the river, who is on the path, holding onto the rod of iron, or who is standing next to the tree? Where do you want to be at the time when the great and spacious building falls? Best place to be would be standing at the tree, partaking of the fruit, because that fruit is filled with light and joy and direction. If you are, the next best place would be obviously continuing to hold on to the iron rod, because you still have some direction, and you still have this vector that is pointing to the tree of life, and you're still going to be able to get there. And anyone else, whether they're in the river or in the field, at the time that the false facade of the great and spacious building falls, it is going to be very difficult for people who thought that they really understood the gospel, that they really understood what was necessary for salvation. They will find out that they are very much still in the darkness, and very much still on their own, and very much still lacking. They probably thought before that they understood, and just like the parable of the 10 virgins, where you have 5 virgins who show up with oil in their lamps, and they fall asleep, and you have 5 who are foolish virgins who have no oil in their lamps, and they fall asleep. And again, there's this darkness. They're all asleep, and the cry of the bridegroom goes out, or the cry goes out saying that the bridegroom is coming. And this cry probably in some ways coincides with the fall of the great and spacious building. and everyone is asleep at that point, and they wake up and they realize that they are either in an okay position or they're in a really bad spot at that point. And those who have no oil will realize that they had thought that they could rely on those with oil in their lamps, and they will realize, just as in the imagery of Lehi's dream, that the path can only be traversed one at a time individually, and that requires that traversal through darkness. And it's going to be very, 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 very late in the game if people decide to get on the path after this happens. Best to have oil in your lamp when the cry that the bridegroom is coming goes out. It's best to be standing at the tree at that time. So, question is, do you wait? Do you wait to get to the tree? Do you take a slow walk up that path? Or do you hold fast to the iron rod and bust through the darkness to get to the tree before all of the chaos in the end times? Faith requires movement. Faith requires breakthroughs. Faith requires going through darkness. The amount of faith that you exercise at this point, when we are all citizens of Babylon or Sodom and Gomorrah, where everybody says all is well in Zion, but everybody kind of knows that all is not. There's a significant amount of faith that's required at this point. And the fact is, we are all investigators. The fact is, there is no being born into the true church with salvation being handed to you. There is no such thing as somebody being given the gospel or given oil in their lamps. The playing field is much more level than anybody ever thought. And what is required to get to God is the same for everyone. We love to send missionaries out to those who haven't received the gospel or Christianity, that don't know about Christ, that don't know about the scriptures, and yet we send people out to convert those people, and yet we are not of ourselves converted. Jesus, his main apostle was Peter, and in Jesus' lifetime, Peter wasn't converted. That's a strange thing. Peter, having all access to Jesus, being his main guy, Jesus said, "When thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren." Peter found out that the gospel requires everything, and it's not about attaching your name to somebody else. It's not about even proclaiming Jesus, but it is about having the Spirit. It's about having oil in your lamp, and that is required for all of us. We are all required to be investigators. So, best to traverse the path now. Best to not assume that you have achieved salvation while others have not. If you believe that you have achieved salvation, then you are more likely to be a citizen of the great and spacious building than to actually have received the salvation that you believe that you have. That salvation requires partaking of the fruit and turning away from the world and not embracing what everybody else embraces. That path that needs to be traversed is extremely narrow and requires everything that you have to get through that darkness to a place of light. And especially in our day, especially where things are never as they seem in this life, it requires that we take steps of faith to move forward. And as we do, and as we give all that we are to push through that darkness and to come out the other side, even being citizens of Sodom and Gomorrah, it will be worth it when all the false facades come tumbling down and we are left wherever we happen to be in this drama. And hopefully that is standing next to the tree and partaking.